Hello again, and welcome to episode number 16 in A Year Gardening, following my exploits in the garden through the year of 2020. As you can see, the Amelanchier tree is really doing very nicely, and we've got everything mulched up quite nicely down in the rose garden, so things are now starting to take a nice shape. Now, with the reopening of the garden centres, I've been very happy, and I went to my local garden centre yesterday and I bought some shrubs to start on the shrub border in the front garden. I've only got 5 to start with, but these are the feature shrubs, so these are the ones that are going to be the biggest and will define the shape of the border. And so I'll show you how I'm getting on with that later in the show. I've also got some more seeds. It's not too late to be planting seeds for the flowers in the garden. We can probably plant these up to mid-June, and so I've got some climbers and some decoratives, and I've also got some plants to go into the memory garden. So lots to do today, and we'll fire through that now, and hope you enjoy today's show. Well, I'm back in the greenhouse now, and I have got a pack of Canary Creeper. It's a really fast growing annual which will cover some fences and just give us a nice background, but it's got a beautiful yellow flower which gives it its name actually, because they look like small yellow birds. Fantastic they are. So I've just got one packet here, and I'm going to plant those in some pots here. As always, I've already pre-watered the compost in my pots, and I've counted out the seeds, and there are 11 here, which means I should get 1 to each pot, and I'm just going to pop it into the centre and cover it over lightly. And these will take around about 10 days to germinate, and then probably another 14 to 28 days to grow big enough for me to plant out. So we'll probably be planting these out into the garden at the end of June. It's so fantastic that we can actually plan ahead. It's one of the wonderful things about gardening, is you know that you're going to be able to do things in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks time, whatever. Happy days. So that is my 11 seeds planted. So I must get some labels out and label the individual pots. And although they're called Tropiolum, I'm just going to put Canary Creeper on the labels here, because that is what I know the plant as. Canary Creeper. And I'll label each one of these pots up and leave them here for the rest of the day, because I've got some water underneath and it'll just soak up into the compost. And then we'll have a look at these in 3-4 weeks time as we're ready to put them out. Fantastic. Well, that's the Canary Creepers planted up in the greenhouse, and they are going to be a welcome addition to the garden. Now, going way back to the very first episode in February, which was episode number 4, I did show you the plans for the front garden. Although they were a layout and ideas at the time, they're now taking shape, and obviously we've shaped the front lawn, and we've got the wildflowers growing in there, and a few more plants and shrubs have gone in there. But also on that plan was the design for a shrub border. And as I said at the introduction, I've been to the garden centre and bought 5 shrubs. So I'd now like to take you out to the front garden and show you those going into the ground. Well, here we are back in the front garden, I've already dug a hole for the first shrub, and this is just Ceanothus Puget Blue, and this has a optimum height and spread of around about 2 metres. That's 2 metres high and 2 metres in the spread. I've already measured the depth of the hole with my spade, and I've put some fertiliser pellets in the bottom. Now the plant itself has been sitting in some water for the last 2 hours or so, so it's ready to go into the ground. So let's go and get that. Well, here we have the Ceanothus in its pot. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to grab a handful of compost and just pop into the bottom of the hole. Again, I've made the hole square and approximately twice the diameter of the pot. So let's just lift this little baby out of here. Absolutely soaking, absolutely wonderful. So we'll just pop a little bit more back down in here, just a little bit too low. That's perfect. We'll just pop a little bit of soil around there just to hold it for a second. Now I'm going to put some more compost around that. And all I'm going to do then is I'm just going to work it around the plant with my hands. Give it a nice start for the roots on there. That's lovely. Let's pop some of the soil back here. Nice and upright, and I'm just lining it up against the lines in the fence, which I know were only set with the spirit level a year or so ago, so they should be perfect, and that means this should be as well. So that's holding it there into the ground, and before I cover it off, I'm just going to give it a little water. And we'll let that soak in. Now I've got 5 shrubs ready to go in here, so I've got 2 set for this side and 2 for this side. One that is going over this side is a magnolia tree. Now that has a maximum height of 8 metres, so that's going to need a fair bit of space on its own. So let's go and get these plants sorted out. Well, I've now got the hole dug for the magnolia. Now this is Magnolia Leonard Messel, and as I say, it can grow up to 8 metres high, but that is a 10-year prediction, so it does need a fair bit of room. And so I've dug a hole. Hopefully it's going to be the right size. So we've got the plant in the water over here, so let's just have a quick look. Now once again, I have put some fertiliser pellets in the bottom. I'm just going to grab a handful of compost and pop in there as well. Give that a little stir up in the bottom. Now let's release the plant. Oh, beautiful. Now that's going to be a little bit deep, so let's bring some of the soil in from around the side. Have a look at that. And that's going to be just about right, maybe just a little bit more there. That's fantastic. So I'll grab some more compost first of all, just to put around the roots. Firm that in by hand. So there we have 2 plants in. I've got to measure out the spacing for the next plant. Well, now I've got 3 plants in. I have the Ceanothus to my left, I have the leptospermum here and I have the magnolia. Now the ceanothus and the leptospermum both have a fairly wide spread. So about 1.5 metres on the leptospermum and around about 2 metres on the ceanothus. They will mingle in and join together as they grow. And the leptospermum has a red flower, the ceanothus a blue flower. So therefore we will have red and blue together. I don't call this house Selhurst Park for no reason at all. Okay, I've dug the holes for the last 2 shrubs. I have going in next to the path here a syringa, which grows to about 1.5 to 2 metres, so it'll be a lower flowering plant than the others on the other side. And then the one that's soaking at the moment is a potluck. It's a premium autumn flowering shrub from the garden centre, from the reduced pile. So no one knows what that is until it grows. So, excuse me, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the syringa and I'm going to plant that one into this hole. Both holes have been prepared again. So we're just going to remove this from the pot. Oh, beautiful. Pop that inside here, lovely height, and we just bring some of this earth back round. Now, as I put so much compost in here, I didn't need to mix any more compost in with this one here. So that's our syringa nicely in the ground, nice and firm down there. And now we'll take potluck out of the water. There we go. I'm hoping it's going to be a lower flowering plant than the others. It does look like it's got a fairly low aspect. Shall we bring that along? Yes, that way round I think. Pop a little bit of this down the side just to hold that in position. Get a little bit of compost around that. Firm that down by hand and then just bring in some of the soil. Lovely. And that's our 5 plants planted in the shrub border. So these are going to be the key plants, and then we're going to develop it as we go forward. Let's take this pot out of the way. Well, that's those plants planted in the front garden. Now, I was just thinking, at this moment in time, I should be getting ready to go to Chelsea. No, not the football, but to the Chelsea Flower Show. And unfortunately it's cancelled this year, so I'm really lucky that I've had all this time in my garden and I'm getting my own Chelsea together with some lovely colours and some flowers, and everything else is coming together nicely. But I've had an idea of something I'm going to do in the garden, very Chelsea-esque, for next year, which means there may be another year gardening, a second series next year, but I've got to get through this year first of all. However, I've got some bits and pieces to do down in the greenhouse, so let's take a walk down there now. Well, today I've got a couple of jobs I need to do in the greenhouse. I've got some aubrietia seeds, which are an autumn flowering perennial, which I'm going to be planting. I've also got my tomato plants ready to plant out, the ones that I'm going to be keeping under grass, and I'll show you how I do that in a minute. But firstly, I'm just going to pop these aubrietia seeds into a terracotta bowl. Okay, so I have my packet of aubrietia seeds. These are another very, very small seed. Now, the reason that I'm sowing these into a terracotta bowl is that I intend to keep some of these seeds growing in the bowl. I'm only going to take about 1/3 of the packet out of that, but keep some growing in there after I've thinned them out. So I'm just going to put a very fine sprinkling around here, and as per usual I have just pre-dampened this compost. and I've probably got around about 50 seeds just going into this little bowl, and that will allow me to thin those out as they grow and to also keep some in the bowl. Now I'm just going to take some more compost very finely and just cover the seeds. Just a little covering on here. Just level that out over the top. I will leave those to enjoy themselves for the day, but I will just grab a pencil and a marker and mark these up au Breccia. And these will go to watering with the rest of the plants later on today. I'm just going to stand those aside for one moment there. Something else that I did going back about a month ago was I put some plastic bags over a couple of the hellebore flowers. I've now collected those bags and I'm going to just plant those seeds into a couple of pots. So I've got a couple of pots handy just here. I'm just going to pop some compost into a couple of those. Let's just take these two here. And we'll just fill those with some compost. There we go. And let's take one of the seed bags here. We'll open this up. Remove the flower head. So just out of that one pack, that one flower head, I've probably got around about 25 to 30 seeds. So I'm just going to spread these thinly into here, as individual as possible, because they're a fairly large seed, but I don't consider them all viable to grow, but we never know, and we'll just see what we get. And as they do sprout, then I will just transfer them on as individuals into other pots. There we go. And again, we'll just put a little bit of compost over the top of those. And again, grab a couple of labels for those. 1, 2, and just mark those up as hellebore. One in there, and another one in the other pot. And all I will do is I'll just keep those damp for the next few weeks. Well, one other job that I've got to do in the greenhouse is I'm actually planting out my indoor tomatoes, and I have a particular way of doing that, so I will show you what I'm doing. When I'm putting my tomatoes out in the greenhouse, I set up a string for the plants to eventually grow up. Now the way that I do that is I take a small flower pot and I feed some string through the pot. Now this is going to enable me to actually give a firm base, so just through the drainage holes at the bottom, just put the string through here. Wrap that, then just tie it off inside. It doesn't have to be particularly tight or particularly neat, but just so that I have the pot hanging on the string. I then just take a few pebbles from the floor of the greenhouse to give that a little bit of weight. So we've already got the tomato placed out, so we'll just move that out of the way. We'll take the pot with the stones in it, mark out behind where we're going to grow the tomato. Then we'll just dig the ground out deeper than we're going to be planting the tomato, nice and deep in here, and then we'll pop that pot down inside there nice and firmly, cover it back over for now. All I then need to do is to bring my string up onto my line, grab a pair of scissors there, and then I just tie that line on here. Then as the tomato grows, I can wind the lead around the string, so that's just in front of the string. Just pop that out of the pot, into the ground, and just lean it very, very slightly towards the string. Firm that down all around, and that tomato plant is ready to grow. I thought I would just share some of the progress down in the rose border, and we've got some lovely rose flowers out already. Admittedly, there are a lot of them still in bud. This is nice. We've got some geranium flowers coming out, nasturtiums are in flower, and the border is starting to change from spring to summer, which is a wonderful thing. Well, just a quick one now, because the fruit is forming really nicely on the strawberries, so it's time to actually protect those from the soil. So we've got some straw here, and all I'm going to do is just move the straw out, lift up, and we're going to feed some straw underneath the forming fruit in order to protect it. And this will just keep the fruit away from the soil. We'll pop that back in there. And I'll do this also in these little pots around the top here. And I'll do that in all of these pots and in all of the drawers in the planter. And that's going to be terrific. Well, it's early evening now, and the grass is getting very, very brown. So we need a bit of water on it, so I'm just putting out the little fan sprinkler over there, and we're going to see if we can get some moisture back into the grass, get it a bit greener. Well, that brings me to the end of episode number 16 in A Year Gardening. It also brings us to the end of May in the year of 2020. Now, I've done quite a bit in this little instalment, and I'm very, very pleased, especially with the way the shrub border's looking. Front garden's coming on very, very well. We've got still a lot of plants in the ground and growing, and in the next episode I hope to be able to show you the wildflowers in the front garden, the planting of the peas, which we got to put out now because near cast a clout till May is out, so in June we can actually really start planting our plants outside. I've got to show you some work in the courtyard garden as well, which I didn't have time to get round to. And for those of you with good memories, you may remember back in January I showed you an initial plan of the back garden, and I hope to be putting in the foundation for the wall, which I'm going to grow some succulents and some ivies on. and also start laying the track bed for the garden railway. So lots to do, lots planned, and I'm very much looking forward to sharing it with you again. So thank you very much for your company, and it's a really enjoyable journey going through this year, and it's lovely having you along with me. So that just leaves me to say, stay well, stay healthy, stay alert, as they say, but most of all, stay happy. And I'm staying happy with a nice glass of Shiraz this time. So good health, cheers, and I'll see you next time.